Now this particular set is one of the newer sizes. It's the 5x7 and it's a really nice orientation. It allows Lisa to get slightly different dimensions on her designs here, but as you can see, I've actually fitted it onto a square card. So what I wanted to show you today really was how we can create this sort of effect, which is in effect just two of these designs put together and fits onto a square card nicely. Now the cards I use generally, I think somebody asked me the dimensions the other day, so let me just quickly bring my ruler in and show you. Oh, sticking to the magnet here. So it's just under 6-inch square. They're the type of card, they're the size cards I use. That's my preference. I have a whole stack of these as card blanks, so that's why I use these. And also, if you notice actually on this card, I haven't actually done any embossing. I don't think it needed it because I was putting two on there together. As beautiful as the embossing is, I thought for this particular design, it didn't actually need it. Just sitting flat, I think worked lovely, but I mean, if you do give this a go and you emboss, I'm sure that would look absolutely perfect as well. So I just wanted to show you. Again, it will be me showing you how the layering stencils work and the inks that I put through them, and then I'll go through how the actual cards construct, and I'll perhaps give you another couple of ideas on how these this particular design can be put together to create different shaped cards. Now hopefully you'll enjoy watching the layering. It's something that doesn't get old. It's still fascinating to watch, and you watch other people's colour combinations, and I think it's still nice to see. Now what you'll notice this time is I have actually die cut the image first, and I'll be stenciling onto that. Normally I would stencil and then die cut afterwards, but for this particular sort of demo, I thought it'd be a lot easier for me to die cut it first. Now if you were to do this also and then you bring in your layering stencils, this particular set has 8 stencils, and just for those who may be new to you, what you can see on the packaging, I'll just let you know this quickly, Lisa does tell us how many stencils she's included. So if for any reason they all get jumbled up on your desk, or you go take them to clean and they don't end up back on the desk with you, you know how many that you're looking for. I think that's actually really useful. But we've got these stencils here, and of course I've got them all in order. And the first one is just the little twigs that come through here. But so what I'm actually going to do first is come in with the second one, because that has the majority of the leaves on there, which I can line up to the outside of my die cut. And that will just enable me to put this die cut in position on the Ultimate here, or even the Ultimate 2 that you may be using in a few weeks time in the States. It just allows you to line that up. Again, hold the die cut underneath and pop the stencil on the peg system at the top there, and just check as you've done that everything lines up. Then once you've done this once, it's really worth taking the time to do it. Once you've done this once, then you can change your stencils and you know that everything is all lined up. So bear with me a second while I do this. Right, I'd normally actually get my head right over the stencil, but you don't want to see my hair or my head, back of my head. So okay, right, as I was saying, because I've lined up the die cut under stencil number 2, I may as well get on and just start stenciling this, and then I can put stencil 1 in just afterwards. So we have the leaves. I'm going to bring in my stencil brush, and we add our first layer, which is our green. Now I have already done half of the half of the design by stenciling this once before. So what I am conscious of doing is, let me just bring it in. I'm just conscious of hopefully getting similar sort of colours. This is the one that I've done, so this would make up one half. And as I'm sort of putting these on the same card, I sort of really do want to make sure, let me just put that, where am I put that there? I do want to make sure that we sort of get the same sort of colours on both sides. Now the fact that I'm doing it on a different day, I'm not quite sure how successful I'll be, but we'll give it a go. If you were doing this one after the other, it's an awful lot easier, because I stenciled two last night, one after the other, and they look pretty much identical. So the fact that I've sort of come in the following day to do this, that may just sort of mean I may just go a little bit off colour with what I've already done, but you'll get the idea of the design. So now I'm coming in with stencil 1 now. This is the grey, and I'm using a small stencil brush because we have small areas of design here. And because the two stencils are really so different, it doesn't matter that I didn't do one first and then the second one second. So so it's always good to be at that little bit adaptable. So we just put our grey in there. Okay, so when I put the stencil back over here, I'm just making sure that I put that so it sits as number 1. So from now on, we should all work in order. So now we can come in with our flowers, and I'm going to use, you'll notice here that I'm using blending inks, apart from the yellow, which is the Juicy Pineapple. I'm using the pigment ink, and that's purely because it lays down slightly less colour. It's slightly more muted, and that's the look I wanted on this particular design. And that's for no other reason, but I think also it shows you how well the two inks do blend together. Although the pigment inks are ideal for catching all the intricate detail of the stamp, you can actually blend with them. So I just want to lay that colour down. Again, those of you familiar with my lives, I always seem to go quite light on these first layers, but they will be much more noticeable when I take the stencil away. Now, I think it's worth noting on this particular stencil, you have part of the detail here, and it's actually quite an intricate part. There's these two pieces. This is only attached by a very small section there, if you can see, and not attached on this side. So what I found using this, you have to be really quite gentle. For one, when you're going over this, to actually go in the direction that this part of the stencil naturally sits. So I'll work with the design that way. But also, if you're working sort of in and around, you can just hold that down, and then you can work over the stencil like that, and that just holds this a little bit in place. The same this here as well. You have really intricate little berries coming into this flower. If you went too vigorous, you will fold those back, purely because of the nature of the material that you're working with. But just, as I say, just being aware of that initially before you start, you can make sure that you then work around that really gently. So most of that is yellow. See, I picked up the wrong brush, and that's gone a little bit orange there, but that's fine. Do you know what? We work with what happens, won't we? So we have our flowers laid down. So we have stencil number 4. So we can actually put the detail of the flowers in, and this time I can go a lot heavier with the stencil, with the ink, and we'll have a lot of detail showing in those flowers. Okay, so let's take that away. Now what I will do, and I'm judging this purely on the design that I've already done, there's a slight bit of orange in there, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit of orange, and say what I'm doing is just building this up really slowly. I want to try and get similar sort of colours as to what I've already achieved, and that's possibly too much. It's not going to be perfect, but there we are. There we are. And I might also just go over it just slightly with a tiny bit of grey. Not a huge amount, but that just sort of tones it all down, which is what I can see that I've already done on that one there. And it is using just very small amounts of these inks. You can see that the colour of that is changed and is looking much more similar to what I've already done there. Okay. So now we come in with another lot of flowers. Now I will go in initially with a little bit of grey, just to give that undertone, because fortunately this grey that Lisa has, it's called Cobblestones. If you put it on really lightly, then you can layer any colour over the top. So I'm going to go in with some green. And then just to differentiate these leaves with the ones that we put down, the ones that we stenciled initially, I'm just going to add a tiny bit of blue. And again, I mean, this is a gorgeous blue. It's a real turquoisey peacock blue, and it's called Tranquil Waters. But if you use it really sparingly, look, you can barely see that I've got any on my stencil, and you work that into your design, when you take the stencil away, you will actually see that these leaves will have a slightly bluier, greenier look to them. There we are. Now that does look quite different. You see on here they're actually a lot bluer than they are on there, but that's okay. That's okay, I don't mind that at all. So we come in with these berries. I'm going to continue with the grey. No, I'm not. That was, I think I picked up the green then, didn't I? So I'll continue with the grey, because I want these berries really to stand out. If you were doing this for like Christmas or something, you could do these in red and they'd look fab, I think. But I really like that bold look, like that. So come in with the centre of the flowers. And what colour should I do? Let's come in with a little bit of yellow. So we use our larger stencil brush and we try and put plenty of colour down there. So we want that to be quite bold. I won't put orange on at this stage because there's one more stencil. Actually, I will put a bit of orange just in there because I'm just looking at the stencil that's coming up next. There we are. So the last stencil we have, see stencil number 8, and you can see how quick, once I got into the flow of that, you can see how quick you was able to get through these. So I'm going to just put a tiny bit of orange in the centre of these flowers, so that goes into that centre detail, like that. And then what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go with grey all over. Now what this does, the grey really does sort of blend into the colour that is laying underneath the stencil. So it's not too heavy, and I found it just really picked out all that detail. And I've done this on all of the ones that I've prepped, that I'll show you in a minute as well. And I really like the effect that it had. So I'll just pull that away and just check that it's picked out all the detail on the flowers and on the leaves, and I think that has. Now, saying that, what I've done on this one, I've actually used orange in the flowers. So I think what I might do, just to even these up a little bit, now this is really thinking on my feet, but it just shows that this is possibly a scenario that you'll have at home anyway. I'm going to see if I can line this up with what I've done already. Now this is the one that I stenciled yesterday. I'm going to line that up I'm going to pop that on the pegs there, and I'm going to go all over that with the grey, and hopefully that will sort of even up and make both of the designs look a little bit more coherent with each other. And you'll notice that even though this is the one that I've prepared and already sort of backed on to a piece of darker card, so it has a shadow, but it's still allowing me to put this back into the Ultimate and onto the peg system, so I can just alter that a little bit. So the Ultimate, and the fact that we've got this anchored here, and the fact that this particular stencil has a lot of detail, and you can line it back up quite straightforward. Don't ever worry about sort of having a mistake or missing something. It's so easy to go back and rectify that. So now I've changed all of the orange details into the grey, and hopefully these will match up a little bit more, if that makes sense to you. So there we are, that's the stenciling done for today. I know you're all very familiar with that now. Right, you'll see on the one that I done yesterday, this already has a drop shadow on there, the grey. And to do that, you take yourself a piece of darker card. It doesn't matter, I'm using grey, but you can use whichever colour suits you best. And you die cut, excuse me, you die cut yourself a piece. You leave that plain. You don't need to emboss or stencil that at all. And then when you lay these together, although they are basically the same size, so look, if you put them together and lay them one on top of each other, you won't see the grey underneath. So although this isn't a true matte and layer in the sort of the normal sense of the word, where you have an even border all the way around, what you can achieve is a shadow just by offsetting the two die cuts. Now, because of the way that I'm going to add these die cuts to the card, I want the drop shadow to be visible on this side. If you want it on this side, or if you at this end of the design, then you can offset it this way. So that's entirely up to you. And again, that's what gives you that flexibility to use these. But I want the majority of the shadow this way, because this part of the design, I want to flow freely into here. So really, I want to make sure that none of that grey is showing along this cut edge here, if I can possibly help it. So there we are. It's as simple as that. That has a drop shadow on it now. So then if we bring our card in, say a square card, and just by playing now, you can see that these have the ability, I don't know if this by chance or it was just by me looking, to actually interlock. Now it takes a little bit of playing, and you can just sort of figure it out to the way that you think looks best. So there's no right or wrong way to this, but if you can interlock, so it's seamless down the middle. When you put that onto the card, you can see how well that sits onto a 6x6. Now it does overlap slightly, so if you do have an envelope slightly larger to accommodate that, then perfect. But I really do like the fact that the design tips over the edge. The only thing I would suggest saying is to make sure on the edge that the card will sit, like on here, that it does lay flat, because otherwise that will stop it sort of sitting up on the mantelpiece, or won't it? So you just need to bear that in mind a little bit. But you can just sort of turn it and twist that, and you have yourself a rosette, which to all intents and purposes, when you look from a distance and when it's set on a card, nobody would ever know that that isn't one complete stencil. So that sits really nicely on there. And then of course you can cut yourself any sentiment, and you can have that sitting. I like to put that just off to the side so you can see the majority of the flowers. But if for some, you can always put that in the middle. You can create yourself a die cut. I had one earlier. Where's it gone? I have a a circle die cut here from when I was preparing another live. You can always put that in the circle with your sentiment on, and I think that works just as well because you see all the detail around the outside. So if you matte and layered that there, then that would be great. This equally would work if you scaled up your card to like an 8x8 card as well, wouldn't it? That would look really lovely. Okay, so that's card number 1, which is the same as I've done here. Now if I turn this over, I've actually created this as a gatefold card. Okay, so I had my card blank, which started off as one long piece of card. I've created myself a 6x6 basically card bank. That's the footprint of the card, and I've created myself a gate card. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. I've put the extra flaps on, so when this card sits like that, you have 2 panels still facing front. If these were attached and it was a gatefold like this, it would still open, but when you sat the card on the wherever it's going to sit, then you can't see the front of the card. So I think it's a really sort of nice idea, if you can, to sort of have the panels on the front sitting like that, so it stands up nicely and those the panels are facing front. Now what you can do, I was thinking, because these 2 die cuts do interlock, you can use that as a mechanism on the front of a card. So how about attaching these 2 pieces to the front panel of a gatefold card and still allow them to overlap. Now, like so. So you basically still have your square card as you have here, but it's now in the form of a gatefold, so you have that extra dimension to that. Now, let me just see, I do have other ones here, so I think what I might do, I might actually attach these to the front of this card, just so as you can see how that works in practice. So let me add some glue there. Now, this is where this takes just a little bit of playing, and I've still got a little bit of wiggle room there with the glue. So I think if I overlap those designs, I wonder if that would work like that. There we are. Even so, that could sit like that, couldn't it? And I think that is a really... move those up, because say we don't want the design overlapping on the bottom there. And I think that works really well. And you can see, let me see, if this were sitting on a mantelpiece, that the 2 panels will stay facing forward, and that's just a really lovely design. Otherwise, let me just show you, these would sort of disappear off to the front like that, wouldn't they? So why not have them on show if you've taken the time to create them? So I think that is a really nice design also, and the sentiment that you create can still sit on either side, or if you just want to leave that, which sometimes I do actually like to do, just leave the card plain, so when they open it up, that's when you see the greeting on the inside. So that is another option, and I think that's just a really nice play on the square card and works really well. So the other idea I had was to create a oh, I think is this, no, it's not 5x7, sorry, I've forgotten. I think this might be a 6x8 card. My magnet's attaching. Let's move that out of the way. So yes, we have 6 inches by 8 inches, yes. Again, it's because the card blank I had, which comes unscored, so I can fold this into any size I like. So this is actually going to be a card that opens this way, which I think is really unusual. That looks really nice. And I've already stenciled 2 other designs. Now this time I've changed the colours up, so I've got them in pink. So they look really nice on there. Now you could put that on there like that, and then you can put your sentiment on. There it is. Okay, so there we are. We have a larger card, so the flowers have a bit more breathing space, so you can have your sentiment and you can decoupage, you can put that there, you can put your drop shadow around the outside, and that's a really lovely look. Or the other thing you can do is just extend that a little bit further by adding a detail in the middle, and because of the shape of the flowers, and particularly this set in particular, which is slightly oval, I think that works so well by giving that a frame like that. Now what I've used here are the oval ornaments, and I've just die cut the intricate die around the outside, and I've cut that twice. I've cut it once to have the intricate layer, and then I've just used the die cut just to create a plain section and mounted that on top, and I've 3D'd that. I actually found I had some tiny 3D foam pieces, and there was enough places within the design that I could put those 3D pieces in to actually create a little bit of dimension there, if you can see. Now in the center here, when I die cut this intricate section here, I've used one of the central dies to actually cut out the circle, so I have an aperture, and then I've used that same die to cut out another piece of this stencil design. Now you'll see this here. Let me just move those inks up out of the way, because I will get my card in them. You can see here that onto craft card I have stenciled this design and die cut it out. Okay, see, you've got the leaves there, and I've taken the circle die and just cut a circle out of that area. That's what's given me that central piece there. And then, because I wanted this part to look like old linen sort of fabric, I've embossed just that piece, which I've die cut from this stencil piece, with the Rustic Hessian embossing fold. So I've used that today, and that's just given the look of an old piece of fabric, which is coordinating with the flowers around the outside. But I think that's worked really well. But that's another way to use your die cuts. Just because you stencil them, die cut them as a whole, you don't always have to use them as a whole. You can cut into them. So that I thought was a really nice way, so just to add a little bit more detail. And then of course you can add your sentiment onto there. Thanks everyone, and I'll look forward to catching up with you again next week.